For all the latest updates, subscribe to News 9.
Hello, you are watching News 9 Digital with me, Amrutha, and I'm going to be talking about how the novel coronavirus affects children. So far, we have heard a lot of researchers talking about what the virus does to an adult's body. But what happens to the children? Children and the elderly have been categorized as the vulnerable lot amidst this pandemic. Now, while we see that the elderly are most likely to die from the virus, children do not figure among most of the infection rates or the fatality rates.
If we take the overall incidence and out of 100%, 80% they will have mild infection. So only 15% will have moderate to little severe infection. And 5% will go for the critical stage like ICU and all. But if you take the children, in that 5% critical stage also it will be only 2%. So that is the reason why children...
Among the total cases affected in the world, children amount to less than 2% of total cases.
Then why are they still considered vulnerable? So let us first speak about the kinds of symptoms that are seen among the COVID-19 infected children and how it affects them. So first and foremost, the children who are infected with COVID-19, so doctors across the world have observed some common symptoms among the infected COVID-19 children. Among them is called the Kawasaki syndrome or the Kawasaki disease. In Delhi as well, doctors at a children's hospital observed these Kawasaki disease-like symptoms in some infected children. Now this is how one doctor explains the Kawasaki syndrome as.
A Kawasaki disease-like syndrome has been found in Europe and America in slightly older children and adolescents. And what is this Kawasaki-like syndrome? It is basically a hyperimmune syndrome involving multiple organs, and most of these children become sick needing pediatric intensive care, and they may end up having multi-system failure and shock, and the chances of dying is more. And however, fortunately, the percentage of children affected with this Kawasaki-like syndrome is very less.
Now the Kawasaki disease is quite rare even among children and affects mostly children aged less than 5 years old. But it is being seen increasingly among the children who are infected with coronavirus. Now, a study which was done in Wuhan showed that out of the 171 infected children who were studied, among them only 1 died and 3 required ICU. And 12 children's lung x-ray showed that they had patches of pneumonia, which was quite worrisome. Now, why is pneumonia worrisome among children? Because pneumonia infection during early childhood is associated with long-term effects such as obstructive lung function or increased risk of adult asthma, as well as bronchitis. Now, keeping these things in mind, there is one worry which has been a cause of concern for researchers and doctors worldwide, of whether this novel coronavirus is going to leave some sort of long-lasting impact on children or not. This is how one pediatrician explains it to us.
If children get affected with COVID, will it have a lasting impact on their health? Now, many studies have shown that a majority of these children recover without any further complications. However, if a child has any pre-existing condition like congenital heart disease or a severe asthma or any metabolic syndrome or genetic syndromes, so these children likely to be slightly more sick compared to a healthy child. So they may have the consequences following COVID infection.
Now, when it comes to long-lasting impact, Kawasaki syndrome is also one of the cause for concern for doctors and researchers around the world, because Kawasaki syndrome essentially is the inflammation of blood vessels across the body, which can result in damage to organs. However, experts have just suggested that the immunological storm or the cytokine storm or the overreaction of immune system may not be such a worry among children because essentially children do not have the robust immune system like that of adults. Even this aside, there are very small amount of research or studies which have gone into how coronavirus affects the children, and still more studies need to come out to provide a conclusive measure of how coronavirus actually impacts children. That being said, there are also some reports wherein doctors in the United States have found out that the X-ray of lungs of asymptomatic COVID-19 infected children have shown damages to lung. Now this is without any symptoms or without having any sort of fever or cough. This only emphasizes on the fact how little we know of the novel coronavirus. That being said, debates around the world are raging on whether to reopen schools in this stage of the pandemic or not. It is even so more going on in the United States. In India also, some government officials and governments are planning to reopen schools probably by August, even though this is not ascertained at this moment. However, when taking into decision the reopening of schools, these sort of factors on how coronavirus affects children need to be taken into consideration. Finally, why are still children being categorized as vulnerable if they do not form a significant portion of the infectees or fatalities? This is how a pediatrician explains to us the reason why children are categorized as vulnerable.
And if you take it infants, especially toddlers, that age, especially 1 to 3 years, we'll call it as toddlers, and 3 to 6 years preschool children. That is the age, suppose any LKG, UKG, everything starts. Usually, fast spread is there during that age because they don't realize that close contact is hazardous. Because that is the time where these children know they will go to the child and they will get in.
You can leave your opinion in the comment section down below of what you think of how coronavirus affects children. Also like, share and subscribe to News 9 Digital.